So if you've been playing Duel Links over the last couple weeks, you probably noticed all the Orcust decks running around. It's the newest deck out of the most recent box, and it's been having a ton of success both on ladder and in tournaments. It's a really versatile deck and really fun to play with because you can mix it in with a whole bunch of different archetypes and do a ton of different things with it. It can also be really frustrating to deal with, given that everyone is playing with the deck right now and trying it out. So today we're going with a deck that can completely shut it down and is possibly the best counter to it, Gravekeepers, aka Necrovalley the deck. Now, Necrovalley is a really commonly seen card, as it's used not just in Gravekeepers, but in a ton of different decks to counter various decks in the metagame that are doing well at any given point. Right now, Necrovalley can shut down not just Orcust, but a ton of different decks like Elemental Heroes can't use their Miracle Fusions, Phantom Knights get completely shut down by this card, Chronomaly and Resonators can't use a lot of their key cards with this either, so it's a really powerful card that shuts down not just the best deck in the game right now, but a ton of different things that are running around the meta and that you might run into on ladder. It's also got a lot of cool other things that go with this deck to help protect your Necrovalley and to completely shut down your opponent, including 3 copies of Imperial Tombs of Necrovalley. This card is basically a Solemn Judgement for the deck. As long as you have both Necrovalley and a Gravekeepers monster on the field, when a spell, trap, or monster effect is activated, negate it. Just as simple as that, just negate any spell, trap, or monster effect. So it's basically a lot like a Solemn Judgement, and we have basically a Vanity's Emptiness for the deck as well. As long as you have a Necrovalley and a Gravekeeper on the field, this card will stay up on the board and says, neither player can special summon except Gravekeeper's monsters. So unless your opponent is playing a Gravekeeper deck, they can't special summon anything at all. So basically, it's like a Vanity's Emptiness for the deck, combined with 3 Solemn Judgment to back it up, along with the Necrovalley that's going to shut down a ton of different decks. And we also have 8 copies, essentially, or 8 ways to get to Necrovalley in our deck as well. We have the 3 copies of it, plus we have 2 copies of Gravekeeper's Commandant, which is a way to search for it. You discard this card from your hand, add Necrovalley to your deck from your hand to deck. It's basically like a terraforming, but it also is a monster that gains the attack boost from Necrovalley, plus you can also use it with things like Spiritualist to fusion summon into our big boss monster that also protects our Necrovalley. We'll get into that in a second, but we also have 3 copies of the Necrovalley Throne, which can search out the Commandant, so when you copy the 3 Necrovalley, plus 2 Commandant, plus 3 Necrovalley Throne, that's 8 ways to get to the card, so you're pretty much going to have it just about every game and have no problem getting to it. I mentioned the Gravekeeper Supernaturalist. This is another way to get to other cards in your deck. This says you just need 2 Gravekeeper's monsters to fusion summon with it. You can do that with Gravekeeper Spiritualist. We have 3 copies of it here. As long as you have Necrovalley on the field, you can fusion summon using this card and another Gravekeeper on your field or in your hands to go into the Supernaturalist. This card says you gain attacks equal to the levels of the monster you summon, so usually it's going to go up to 2800 attack points, plus you get the 500 boost from Necrovalley, so it'll be at 3300 attack points whenever you summon this thing to the field. It's got a very simple effect that says while Necrovalley is on the field, this card and any card in your field zone can't be destroyed by card effects. So it protects your Necrovalley from things like MST or any other back row your opponent has that isn't Cosmic Cyclone. Plus it can't be destroyed itself by card effects, and during your main phase, you can activate this effect during the end phase, add a Gravekeeper's monster or Necrovalley card from your deck to hand. You don't get the add to the end phase, but it's okay if you activate this card and it gets shut down, you'll still get the effect in the end phase. And you can search for any of your Gravekeeper monsters, or like I said, Necrovalley cards, not just a field spell, but you can also search for your Solemn Judgement with this card. So you can get this out, get a Necrovalley out that shuts down all of your opponent plays, search your deck for a Solemn Judgement that you can set and play the next turn. It's extremely devastating for certain decks to try to deal with this, especially if you're going first. Going second, you can have some trouble dealing with a lot of decks and trying to break through boards, but at least going first, you're going to win a lot of games with it just because of how powerful and consistent you can be with your Necrovalley and its other cards here. We do have some other tools, though, to help out with this deck, though, in the Gravekeeper lineup here. I mentioned the 2 Commandant earlier. We have 1 copy of Gravekeeper Spy here. This definitely feels like an outdated card, being that it's a flip-up effect monster, but it does actually have its uses. If you open up with 3 spell and traps in hand, and you only have 1 monster going first, Spy is probably the best one to have, if you already have Necrovalley in hand anyways, and you don't need to search for it with Commandant. Descendant doesn't do anything by itself, Headman doesn't do anything by itself, Spiritualist doesn't do anything by itself, it needs another Gravekeeper monster, and if you don't have one with Throne, then setting Spy and then like setting your like Book of Moon, your Tomb and Necrovalley is probably the best 1 card like monster you can put on the board. Plus there are situations where you can wall up against decks that do struggle to get over the 2500 mark. So it does have a juice there, and if you do manage to get its effect off successfully, it can be a 1-card fusion monster or a 1-card pop with the Gravekeeper's Descendant. Descendant says tribute another Gravekeeper's monster, target a card your opponent controls, and destroy it, so very good destruction effect. What I like to do with this card is usually fusion off with it with the Spiritualist and put it in the graveyard. That way I have the 1-card Headman to bring this back to the field, because Headman says when this card's summoned, target a level 4 Gravekeeper monster in the graveyard and bring it back in attack mode, or face down defense mode, so you can set your spy if you like with it. But usually you're either going to bring back your Descendant to pop a monster, or more often the Gravekeeper Spiritualist, which says, as I mentioned earlier, you can fusion with this card as long as necrovalley is on the board, using Gravekeepers on your hand or field to summon with it. So a lot of time turn 1 or turn 2 you're going to summon the Spiritualist, fusion off with another Gravekeeper in hand, and then later on you're going to search for the Headman with either Throne or with the Supernaturalist, and then use the Headman to bring back the Spiritualist or Descendants to go into more plays. We also have 2 copies of Book of Moon in here, just the sort of spell or trap card of choice. We had a couple of tech spots tonight, so I decided to go with, but you can go with a number of different things besides Book. 3 copies of necrovalley Throne. I like 3 copies. You can cut it to 2, I know some players do, but I definitely like the 3 copies and didn't feel like it was too much of a problem drawing multiple copies of it. 3 copies of necrovalley, 1 copy of Hidden Temples of necrovalley, and then 3 copies of the Imperial Tombs of necrovalley. In our extra deck, we have the 3 copies of the Supernaturalist, 1 copy of Quintet Magician. You're never really going to summon this thing too often. I mean, you have to have 5 Gravekeepers monsters in hand or on board, and then use Supernaturalist to summon it. But I guess it can occasionally come up. It never did for me, but you're honestly probably better off just using another XYZ monster instead of this. Speaking of XYZ monsters, we have 1 Dark Rebellion, 1 Abyss Dweller, 1 Malevolent Sin, and 1 Steel Swarm Roach. This does come up occasionally, and we'll see that here in the gameplays. Our skill is Life Point Boost A. We don't have any good skills for the Gravekeepers. They actually do have a skill that is specific to them, but it's just not worth running, and we're just better off taking the extra 1,000 life points with Life Point Boost A. But you can use a number of different skills with this deck and have it work out just fine. So let's go ahead and get into the replays. Alright, so are you guys ready to see the extremely complex and difficult, amazing combos with this deck that you need? Alright, so first off, let's activate Throne to search for our Commandant. Commandant can get necrovalley. And then, you guys ready for this? You play necrovalley. And at that point, a lot of players are just going to do this. Yeah, so again, you go first with this deck and you're able to put a necrovalley on the board, a lot of decks are just going to surrender and you're going to get a lot of quick wins like this. So, sorry for some of the gameplays being like this, but... Alright, so try to get some more action-packed gameplay in here. But really, it's just that simple, though. I mean, going first again, you're going to have a lot of hands like this as well. Use Commandant, search for necrovalley, activate the necrovalley. And then, hands like this can actually be pretty difficult for your opponent to deal with, too. Go ahead and play the necrovalley. We're going to summon Headman and get a second Gravekeeper to the board, and just set our 2 Solemn Judgments here. Now, at this point, we got necrovalley to shut down our opponent's grave from doing anything, 2 Solemn Judgments set, so our opponent summons monsters. We're just going to hit it immediately with the Imperial Tombs and try to shut them down and just try to finish them off as quickly as we can, hopefully next turn. He sets 2 back row. We got another Throne, so now we can go for another Gravekeeper monster, summon a Gravekeeper's monster, and once again, your opponent just... There's just times when your opponent just knows there's nothing they can do and you get easy wins. So, I promise the rest of these will have more action, I promise. Alright, so a lot of the losses with this deck were going second games, and sometimes your opponent just puts up a really intimidating board going when they go first, and there's just not a whole lot you can do about it, especially if they have back row to shut down your Gravekeeper's play and you just can't go for your fusion summon. So, you definitely want to try to go first with this deck, but obviously you don't control the coin flip, so... But again, this isn't the most competitive deck in the game. It's just sort of a fun way to shut down and punish the various Orcust players in the game. So, playing against the hero deck, he summons out a Neos and sets 2 back row. We assume one of them is going to be the Super Polymerization, which Dark is an attribute that he can fuse off with. So, we're going to go ahead and use the Throne. Let's search for the Gravekeeper Spy right now. Spy can actually wall up against the Neos pretty well with the necrovalley, and necrovalley does shut down his Miracle Fusion, so we'll set that, set a Book of Moon along with it. He's going to summon Stratos, and instead of trying to pop my back row, he's going to use it to search for the Liquid Soldier, and then try to swing into my Spy, which I don't think he realized I was going to set and have 2500 defense, so I'm able to do that, summon out the Spiritualist from deck, which because of the attack boost from necrovalley, he can't actually swing over it with the Stratos, so he's forced to use off a Super Poly to prevent me from doing anything with it. Surprisingly, he didn't set it. He still had it in his hand. But he's able to go for the Brave Neos. Brave Neos has enough attack points now to jump over my Spy. So let's go ahead and Book of Moon it, stop him from getting a search from the deck. Because if he destroys us by battle, he can actually search his deck for Neos Fusion or something else like that. So Going back to our turn, we have our other Book of Moon now, and we don't really have like a great play here. We could like summon Descendant and pop his monster and swing, but he's got 2 back row to try to interrupt that, so instead I'm just going to go ahead and actually try to Book of Moon my monster, flip it, and see if I can get the effect off to summon a Gravekeeper from the deck. So we'll get Headman out. Headman summons out the Spiritualist from the deck, try to bait out, see if he has back row. He does. He has a Book of Moon. Unfortunately, that's going to actually shut down our play. I can't summon Descendant or link off with it because I didn't include any link monsters in the deck. Maybe that's the choice I would make instead of Quintet Magician will be running the Nightmare Phoenix, and I could have done something there like he's going to try to do right now. He's going to go for Nightmare Phoenix, discard from his hand to pop the Necrovalley. That's going to allow him to activate a Miracle Fusion if he has one. But fortunately, he doesn't have one. Instead, he has the Liquid Soldier that he searched in hand earlier, but that's going to allow him to search his deck, or to summon Stratos from the grave, search his deck for another card, and now he gets to go for the XYZ play, so we're in big trouble here. Fortunately, we do have the 5,000 life points, so it's very difficult for him to OTK us. Plus, of course, we have the monsters on board, but we really need a solid top deck or a way to survive here, and we do. We get the Spiritualist, and it's pretty likely that he get it, right? Because we have 2 Spiritualists left in the deck, plus, I think, was it 2 Throne left in the deck? So it's 4 cards potentially to get this to go for the Fusion play, so we'll go ahead and do that now. Fusion summon out our Supernaturalist, activate its effect so we will get the search in the end phase, swing over his big monster, grab the throne so that we have the ability to search for a number of different things next turn, whatever we need. He can summon the Stratos, search his deck for a Blaze Man, but he can't put the Phoenix to defense mode, so we're going to be able to do some more damage here. Throne's going to search out our Commandant. We should be able to summon this and swing over both of his monsters on his field now, while setting the Solemn Judgement trap card. So he takes out the Fusion monster. We're still able to take out one of his things, though. And of course, we get the search in the end phase. Important to know, even if they deal with your Fusion monster, you still get the search in the end phase. So he's going to summon Blaze Man, try to search for Polymerization, but I'm just going to go ahead and Solemn Judgment it off immediately and hope he doesn't have anything else to follow up with. He has no more Fusion monster, so unless he top decks a Miracle Fusion, he doesn't have anything there, so he didn't, so we're in good position to keep going forward. And maybe I should have saved that for a Miracle Fusion. Now that I think about it, probably would have been a smarter play, but either way, it works out for us, so he's in trouble. We're able to search our deck for the Spiritualist. Going to battle, just swing. I probably could have gone for the Fusion monster here, get an additional search, but we got the Solemn Judgment set, so I felt pretty good about just being able to stop any play that he tries to do here. So, go back to our turn, swing. We have the Solemn Judgment set, so if he has anything, nothing he can do, so we get the win over hero. Now, let's go ahead and make the switch from the game music to the actual game sound now. So, going first here, again, going first always great. We'll summon a monster, put out the Necrovalley, and then set 2 back row, Book of Moon, and a Solemn Judgment, basically. This is actually, I mean, a fairly good setup for a lot of decks. If we're playing against a deck that relies on a graveyard, this is not a bad setup at all, right? We have a way to protect our Necrovalley and other ways to protect our monster, so 2100 attack isn't terrible if your opponent can't, do a whole lot. So he's able to summon out a Machina Fortress, which is a pretty intimidating monster. Summon the Scrap Recycler, able to dump a bunch of Orcust monsters in the graveyard, but he makes a mistake. If he had just gone the battle phase, it would have been a little bit difficult to deal with this. We would have had the Book of Moon, his fortress, and then decide if we actually want to swing over it or not, which allows him to pop a monster. But instead, he gets greedy. He goes for the Phoenix to try to pop the Necrovalley. And I get why he does it, because if he doesn't get rid of Necrovalley, it's going to be hard for him to continue with the scheme. But he goes for it, and remember, we have a Solemn Judgment set, so he's going to discard a card out of his hand, try to pop it, Solemn Judgment, negate, and destroy the Nightmare Phoenix. He has no cards left in hand, nothing left on field, everything's engraved, and can't use its effect because of Necrovalley, so we get the easy win versus Orcust. And again, I apologize for the gameplay this time around not being quite as thrilling as the other gameplay videos, and which are really not all that thrilling to begin with, but again, a lot of the games with this deck are just very simple, play Necrovalley and win the game. But here, we do not have that because we're actually playing a mirror match. Both of us are playing with 5,000 life points. We have the same deck, and he's going to play Necrovalley out. Now, this is actually interesting because Necrovalley effects give attack boosts to both sides, and their effects can trigger both players' effects. Like, Spiritualist just needs Necrovalley on the field. It does not matter who controls it. So I can Fusion Summon with this, regardless of whose Necrovalley this is. So we're going to go ahead and search our deck for the Headman, so we have a follow-up play for next turn, because we're going to go ahead and just Fusion off right here. Summon our own Spiritualists. And there's actually not really a way for us to get over. I mean, I guess I could Book of Moon and then swing over his monster here, so that probably would have been the ideal play here, because it is going to lose the attack boost. In fact, I probably should have done that looking at this, and I would have been just fine setting a single Book of Moon here, but it definitely would have been the play. But we'll go ahead and save it for his follow-up play. So use 1 Book of Moon to take out his his fusion play here, stop him from going with the follow-up. He's going to keep getting the searches though, so we're going to also, keep using our searches every turn. He's actually going to negate the search with the Solemn Judgement, but it doesn't destroy the monster because our monster can't be destroyed by card effects while necrovalley is on the field. And while this negates our search effect, it doesn't negate the other effect of our monster to prevent its destruction. So the monster stays on the board. We're going to summon Headman, go for another fusion play. He has the Necro ceiling here, so I'm like, okay, that's totally fine. We'll just let you pop all the other monsters on the board. We'll swing over your final monster here and just set the rest of our hands to our back row here. So I feel like at this point, I'm in a pretty good, advantageous position to just take over the game at this point. Let him get his search off with the Naturalist. He tries to swing into my monster. We'll just Book of Moon it. That way we can easily take it out. Next turn, at this point, we'll just continue to get our searches off with our Supernaturalist. He can go for the Tombs to stop our search play, but again, it doesn't destroy our monster. It takes out more of his back row cards, so at this point, we're just in a really advantageous position. But I do like what this game does, even though I did make some misplays in this game. I do think it's really cool to show off at least some of the various things that the Gravekeeper deck can do in a mirror match when necrovalley is on the board. Alright, so I believe this is the one loss that I'm going to showcase here out of these replays. I think it does a good job summarizing the struggles that this deck has. Really going second against any kind of really against any kind of competent setup. This wasn't too intimidating of one. But I think it was actually a good game to watch, though, in comparison to some of the other losses where the opponent just throws up a really good board and there's just no, you just get Book of Moon, your power players get shut down, there's nothing left you can do. So here our opponent's going first. He's running DDD. He goes for a Sanaphon turn 1. I'm guessing he thought that because I have 5,000 life points that I was going to be running Infernoid, and this is a pretty good setup against that, but I'm not playing Inferno, I'm playing Gravekeeper, so play the Necrovalley turn 1 and just set a couple back row. My main out on the Sanaphon right now is hope that he activates the effect and I just chain Imperial Tombs to pop it. None of my other cards have any kind of way to deal with this at the moment, so that's what we're going for, but he's going to get smart and lucky here. He activates Orcust to pop one of my back row and he gets the 50-50 hit on the Imperial Tombs before he activates the Sanaphon effect, so good play by him there. Goes to attack mode. We can Book of Moon this monster to protect our guy for at least one turn here. Hopefully we get into something that lets us get to a Spiritualist so we can go for a fusion summon. So it's exactly what we're going to try to do here, but our opponent is smart here. He's going to chain MST to our Necrovalley when we not chain to the effect. He's going to activate MST before we activate the Spiritualist effect. So we can't go for fusion summon without Necrovalley being on the field, and we don't have another way to get to Necrovalley. So completely shuts down our fusion play, but that's okay. They are both level 4, so we can go for the XYZ. But Malevolent Sin isn't going to be able to take out his monster. In fact, because his monster's face down, we don't have anything in our extra deck at this point, any XYZ monsters anyways, that can deal with it. So just go for the Malevolent Sin, try to hit him for 2400 and put him within striking distance. But he has Book of Moon to shut that down. It's fine, it baited out an additional back row. So he has nothing else besides just swinging over a monster on the following turn. We do draw the Spiritualist, but again, we need Necrovalley on the field to go for the fusion play here, and we have no way to get it here. Commandant can only be activated from the hand or grave. You can't like tribute it off with Headman or anything, so we have no way to go for our fusion play here. We just have to wait another turn, hope he can't kill us. Fortunately, he isn't able to, so come back to our next turn. He had not much we're able to do, just set a monster, because we don't have Necrovalley, we have no way to get it, and we don't have a way to get a second monster on the field for Descendant, so we'll just set it, pass. He's able to summon the Kepler and search his deck for Contract, letting him get any monster out of his deck at this point that he needs with this spell card. So at this point he's able to just push the pace, and we know that we're in pretty big trouble at this point because he can just summon, get the Swirl Slime, go for fusion summon play here, and we don't have enough life points to get by this. So at that point it's GG's. But yeah, pretty good, I think, summary of like how this deck fails when you're going second against a pretty good, going first deck. Alright, now I believe this is against Chronomaly. This is another deck that got a lot of support, at least got some support out of the most recent box, but a very powerful XYZ monster that I believe we're going to see in this game that can negate monster effects. So they also have a lot of consistency here. A couple different searchers here, right? Nebra Disc and Crystal Skull basically say search your deck for any Chronomaly monster. That's extremely powerful consistency to have for this kind of archetype. And now they got a pretty nice boss monster to go with them. So Chronomaly Vimana, its main effect says, once per turn when your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can detach 2 materials from this card to negate the activation. So pretty good monster effect negation that Chronomaly now has. We do have the Book of Moon to shut it down though. We can just flip it face down, and he has no extra back row to protect us. So this is the kind of going second game that we can win when our opponent doesn't really have any back row to shut down our fusion play, and he only has like one monster that can really interrupt us, and we happen to have the Book of Moon to shut it down anyway. So we should go ahead and use Necrovalley Throne here, search for the Commandant, Book of Moon is monster so that he can't interrupt our play at all beyond this point. We'll go for the necrovalley and activate it. We'll also go ahead and summon the Spiritualist. Spiritual effect will fusion summon into our big bad Gravekeeper Supernaturalist with only 3,200 attack points. That's the one thing to note, is that Headsman is the only level 3 monster in the deck, so if you do fusion summon with the Headsman, it's going to have 100 less attack points than it usually does, but that's okay here because we still have Necrovalley on the field, which actually shuts down cards like Nebra Disc, preventing its graveyard summon effect from being able to activate. And also we have a Hidden Temples here, which is going to stop him from being able to from special summoning at all at this point. So go ahead and swing over his monster, search in the end phase for a throne, so we have some versatility next turn. And he has no way to deal with our back row here, so he's going to summon a Tusper Rocket, and just no way to swing over our board here. He can't special summon at all because we have Vanity's Emptiness up, and so he's in big trouble. So we search with our throne, go for another Spiritualist, which is going to let us go for another fusion summon here, get out yet another Supernaturalist, search our deck, swing, clear everything out. We get our Solemn Judgement to our hand in the end phase, and what's our opponent going to do at this point? Nothing except surrender. Alright, well, I apologize for some of the gameplay videos not being as good this week. It's just sort of the nature of playing with this deck, but nonetheless, I actually had a lot of fun playing with it, punishing some of these Orcust and graveyard-oriented decks. But if you guys liked the video, please be sure to like and subscribe. I promise next time we'll have a more entertaining gameplay video, and we'll, of course, have our spicy decks of the week coming out every Sunday as well. Going forward is the goal for this channel. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate the support. You guys have a wonderful rest of the day.